Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlin, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Bennett. Do you like the addition to my background for today?
Oh, the Dukes are going bowling, a bowling pin. That's well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I found it at Goodwill for $1, and I had to purchase that. But
Smart.
I'm doing fantastic. We've reached out to the NCAA. We've reached out to the Sun Belt. We've reached out to ESPN. We're trying everything we can to figure out how this bowl stuff works ahead of Sunday. But worst case scenario, we're surprised Sunday with a berth in the Gasparilla Bowl.
I think that's sort of where I've gotten to, and we'll get into the details here in a bit. But there's a certain point when I was like really in the weeds and I was finding like obscure PR contact emails, and I was just like, that one's not worth it, man. Like they're just going to say the game on Sunday. Like it doesn't matter. You can project whatever you want, but they're going to play in a bowl game, and we'll find out the bowl game on Sunday.
And I'm excited for whatever bowl game it is, whether it's the the Serve Pro First Responders Bowl, or if it's the Myrtle Beach Bowl, or if it's the Tropical Smoothie. What is it? The Tropical Smoothie. I have it written down somewhere. I'm going to flip through my pages. The Tropical Smoothie Frisco Bowl, whatever it may be, I'll be happy with the Dukes playing in it. I'm going to try my darndest to get to that game.
I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And another place I'm going to try and get to by my darndest is Three Notched Valley Collab House in Harrisonburg. Also locations, Richmond, Roanoke, Charlottesville, Virginia Beach, Nelson County, all of those great places. But the Valley Collab House, they have awesome specials happening today. Tuesdays, today, get half off of cases. Yesterday, $3 Minuteman pours, and they were gracious enough to allow us to host our live podcast. We'll try and get another one on the books for the basketball season, maybe near the end of the basketball season. Maybe we'll look into ESPN's College Game Day basketball edition being at JMU when we're there somehow.
You never know, because they are undefeated.
Exactly. Also, BetOnline, the holiday season is off and rolling, with NFL in full stride and the NBA and NHL hitting mid-season form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all of your sports wagering info. Bennett, have you bet at all on the NBA in-season tournament?
No.
I don't even understand what's happening with it.
They changed the courts up.
Yeah, there we go. With up-to-the-minute sports wagering and predictions, BetOnline is the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports. And it's not just the big four. BetOnline has info available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that's played, from MMA to international soccer and so much more. Head to BetOnline today. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE. That's promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl sounds great. I agree with that, Moonski. Whatever bowl we're in, I'm kind of selfishly hoping for the Myrtle Beach Bowl, but we'll get into that in just a little bit.
Very selfish.
Or I could be even more selfish and wish for the famous Toastery Bowl. Or the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
It's true.
Ben, are you ready to dive into today's show?
I thought we were going to have a video ad.
There's a reason Christopher William Jewelers has been voted Best of Virginia year after year. It's not just one thing that sets us apart. It's everything. It's the selection, extensive and unmatched, with every engagement ring, loose diamond, and fashion jewelry chosen for quality and brilliance. It's the service. From our diamond experts to our master goldsmith, our team shares a passion for what they do, and it shows. It's the atmosphere, both glamorous and laid back. See for yourself why people can't stop talking about Christopher William Jewelers in Harrisonburg and Weir's Cave.
Yes. I came off way angrier than I was expecting to. But I was like, where's the Christopher?
I need to know what's both glamorous and laid back.
If I don't hear that, I can't give proper JMU sports takes.
Okay, good. I'm glad that 32-second ad is out of the way. You're ready to give JMU sports takes because we have a loaded episode. Starting it off, normally it's a 3-notched weekly preview, but it's this week's 3-notched recap because there is no game this week. But the Dukes obliterate the Chanticleers into another dimension, folks. James Madison took down Coastal 56-14 on their home turf.
Yeah, pretty unbelievable. I mean, I was like, wrote on the website, I was like, look, last year was a cakewalk. It's not going this way this year. Chanticleers, Tim Beck's got them playing better defense. They might not have Grayson McCall, even though they did a little pump fake.
Which I feel like that should be against the rules, that pump fake, what they did.
Also just remarkably dumb. It's like, he's our starter. And then it's like, well, the game starts in 3 minutes. So if he's not, like, that's going to be pretty clear, pretty quick to everyone.
They made their fans mad.
Stupid. He doesn't start. They play, what, they go with Vasco?
They went with Vasco, the dual threat QB who can't throw against the best rushing defense in the nation.
I've still struggled to piece that together because I thought Guest would be kind of the auto start.
And then didn't go with Guest at halftime. And also Guest had a full game of reps against this JMU defense a year ago.
He's in the portal today, so I don't know if that was related.
That may have been related. That's a good point.
But I wonder if it was like they're going to go with Vasco, and he's like, "Oh, cool, bye." Or if he was like, "I'm going in the portal," and they're like, "Whatever, we'll play Vasco." Who knows? His stat line ended up being okay, but they really did not do a whole lot, especially early in the game against JMU. And it was right. I didn't think it would be a dominant performance, yet it was. The Dukes 56-14. When they scored the first 35 points of the game, they just sort of cruised.
Yeah, they've outscored Coastal now 103-21 in 8 quarters of play.
That's insanity.
But like you said, Coastal's offense never really got going at any point in the game. In the first half, 4 of their 5 drives were 3-and-outs. There was a 1 3-play drive that got a first down, but it ended in a fumble. So I counted that as a 3-and-out because it was 3-and-out. And then in the second half, they had 6 drives, 3 in each quarter. Both drive charts kind of went 3-and-out, touchdown, fumble / end of game. So really nothing going at all for Coastal.
No, and it was we said JMU cruise. The first 2 drives for JMU were like super clunky, all the bad stuff from App State, and I was like, what is this? They're not locked in. Maybe they didn't run into the punt returner. It kind of looked like they did. I don't know if somebody else was shoved. I didn't see a replay, but they got a benefit there where they didn't get the call on that was picked up. They ended up getting recovering a fumble, and then I think still punted immediately.
They did
on that drive.
I think that drive was 2 3-and-outs. I think it was 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt.
Their drive chart after that is hilarious. It's touchdown, touchdown, interception, touchdown, 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 punt. So many touchdowns.
I mean, that's how you end up scoring, 56 points?
Yeah, that's a lot of them.
Reggie Brown and Elijah Surratt both eclipsed the 1,000 receiving yard mark on the season. They're the first ever Sun Belt Conference wide receiver duo to do that. And in this game, Elijah Surratt had 6 catches on 6 targets for 107 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, tacked on a rushing touchdown. And every single one of his catches was a successful play. Like, by the definition of a successful play, he had a 100% success rate.
He was phenomenal. He was absolutely unbelievable. He picked up where he left off in the App State game. The jet sweep run to him at the goal line was just, all kinds of fancy. Mike
Whoa, what's happening to
God.
Whoa, got you all tickled.
That was something else. And then they, what was it? I think it was a 4th down play. One of his touchdowns where they they did sort of a play action. They all expected a run. He's wide open for an easy touchdown. They were scheming some stuff up, but then Surratt's also just a very tough cover. But God, it was unbelievable offensively.
I want you to take a random guess what JMU's average starting field position was.
Oh God, it was pretty good. Their own like 40. Is it coastal territory?
It was their own 41.
That's crazy though.
Guess Coastal's average starting field position.
Their own 20.
A little further away. Own 29.
That's a pretty sizable advantage though. Yeah.
That is insane.
That's really, really good. They even ran the ball fairly well.
Fourth best rushing performance of the season in terms of total yardage.
Shout out to the offensive line, Josh Toner. He was on the Pro Football Focus all like offensive team for the week. Did not see that originally. Got a Facebook message from, I believe, his dad. And he was like, pretty good little stat here. I was like, that actually is a great stat that I did not see. So Sean Toner, shout out to Sean, because I did not see that. But that's super impressive, especially for a guy like Toner, who did not start the year on the starting offensive line. So to play the way that he did and the whole offensive line did, missing 2 key starters at each tackle position from the beginning of the year, I thought was super impressive.
I think that may have been one of the best offensive line performances of the season. Like they dominated. There was rush yards available. McLeod had time. He was hardly ever pressured. He was only sacked once. I don't recall even what the sack was. I don't know if it was a pressure sack or just him holding onto the ball for a tick too long. I was never. What?
I do remember because it made me very angry. Perfect pocket. He like rolled out and took a sack.
Okay, so now I wouldn't blame that on the offensive line. A near like perfect performance from them, and it resulted in the rush game looking good. Tyson Lawton had one of his better games of the year. He had a touchdown, 70 some yards. The team as a whole went over 100 yards rushing. Really, really great stuff. JMU on their early downs were electric. The Dukes generated a first down on first or second down 32% of the time, which is very, very, very good. And they had a 54% success rate on third downs. So they were converting on later downs more often than not. And then on early downs, they were able to keep the chains moving, stay ahead of the chains, as that cliche is. And when they've done that this season, they've blown out the opponent. When they don't do that, that's when you have the App State game. And that's when you had all of those early season games where they let the opponent back into it. When the Dukes are firing on all cylinders, I don't think this season, because now this season's over, I don't think there was a Sun Belt team that could beat JMU when they were playing on all cylinders, because there was not a Sun Belt team that beat them outside of App State. Like Troy, JMU played 2 good quarters and couldn't beat them. JMU played a quarter that was good against App State, and App barely beat them.
Dukes are wild. They're absolutely wild. And the amount of credit I feel, or not credit, I guess the blame that sometimes goes on coaches in Signetti when things don't go well, where it's like, oh, they were out coached. They deserve a ton of credit for like out coaching Coastal and out scheming them. So many plays on offense were wide open. I don't know what their plan was for Phoenix Sproles, but bad. Like they would just let him run 7 yards, sit down in the zone, toss him the ball, and then like miss a tackle. It was horrendous. They didn't adjust. 11 catches for 99 yards.
And that was his like best game of it wasn't like that was his best game of the season. Just like a perfect time, a weird time for him to have this coming out party in game 12 of the season. And it was just very odd.
Yeah. And then Zach Horton had like a wide open touchdown that he catches and just sort of strolls in. Everything seemed to be open. McLeod seemed to know where to go with the ball. They ran it well. Defensively, it was pretty good. And every time it kind of went off a little bit, it seemed like they got a timely turnover. I think they forced 3 fumbles and recovered 3. Earlier in the year, they didn't have that same level of like fumble recovery luck. So maybe that just sort of went their way in this one, but
that statistic is 90% luck.
Yeah.
And it normally regresses to the mean, but you mentioned the coaching staff. I also want to shout out the coaching staff because the adjustments they made after the bye week were mind-bogglingly crazy, bogging, whatever. They were crazy. I mean, you don't often see a coaching staff completely change their philosophy. Pre-bye week, they were a run-heavy team that ran the ball more times than not on first down, running into a brick wall, being extremely stubborn. not changing anything. When they got a lead, they turtled. They didn't trust McLeod. They didn't trust the passing game, and they didn't really put the ball in his hands once they did create that lead out of fear that he was going to fail. After the bye week, they passed it a ton more on early downs. They had more and more successful plays. They started to get away from the run game. There was the game against UConn where the run game just wasn't working. So they decided to pass it a butt ton. And it worked out with them scoring a whole lot of points. And it's just, you don't see it often where a coaching staff completely changes what their outlook is halfway through the season. The bye week came at a great time. You always hear that cliche, but the bye week came at a great time, and it offered them an ability to kind of change on the fly. They changed on the fly, and Jordan McLeod took over this offense. He took the bull by the horns, insert your cliche here, and took this Dukes team to took them to cloud nine. Took them to McLeod 9, you could say.
Well said. Well said. But it's an interesting one as we look a little bit. I know there's a bowl game, but with no opponent yet, it makes it sort of easier to look to 2024. Still a game left. But if they can keep Cignetti, I don't know that they can keep Cignetti's staff. Like, even if they keep Cignetti, I got to think some of the assistants get poached. You look at like Brian Haynes, he's done a great job in the defense. Mike Shanahan, I keep thinking he's older than he is. He's 33.
He's your age. He's younger than you.
He's younger than me. I'm 48. He's 33 years old. You've got just a bunch of really good coaches. Obviously, Tino Sinceri draws a lot of headlines as well, but like Pat Kuntz at defensive line. I mean, they've just got great coaches that are like, for the play they're getting out of their players, are like woefully underpaid.
Yeah. So even if they here's a question for you, and we'll talk a little bit more about what this means for the program in just a little bit, kind of what their future outlook is a little bit more in depth. But to tease that now, would you rather keep the staff fully? I know this can't happen, but if Cignetti left, would you rather have Cignetti leave or keep this staff?
That's a good question.
But granted, if Cignetti leaves, like half the staff's going with him.
Oh, yeah. I think you want, like, I feel like Cignetti is like the head of the snake, and you kind of want the head of the snake. Like, I think part of the reason they're so good is that they're like so in tune with each other and what they want to do that it just works really well. And they've sort of had some chemistry where Shanahan was coaching receivers at multiple stops for Cignetti, or at least at Elon. Like, he knows these guys really well, right? His Robo, the offensive line coach, I think he knows him very, very well. They've been together for quite a while now. So I think if you can keep it mostly intact going into 2024, it's going to be nuts, with Cignetti being sort of that key piece where I think, like, if you have him, I feel pretty good about what they're doing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a loaded coaching staff. It's got to be one of the best, if not the best, like overall coaching staffs in the group of 5.
And it might be one of the most underpaid.
Yeah.
But something that this coaching staff has been able to do year in and year out is really extract the most talent out of the quarterback's position, specifically Cignetti, Sinceri, and what Shanahan have done since 2021 with Cole Johnson into Todd Centeio and now into Jordan McLeod. Does he have a case to win Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year?
I feel like he should be.
Right? Like, am I crazy for thinking like it's not even a competition?
It feels like with the record, which like maybe gets too important for some of these individual awards, but the 11-1 record, finishing atop the East, kind of snuck up on me touchdown wise. 40 total touchdowns.
Leads the Sun Belt in total touchdowns.
He had like
he also
not many through 3 weeks.
He's second behind Joey Aguilar in just passing touchdowns by just 1. Aguilar only has 2 rushing touchdowns. McLeod has 8. McLeod is a dynamic threat through the air, and I know we kind of rag on him in terms of read option, but his scrambling ability and his legs do make him a dynamic dual threat quarterback. He averages more yards per game on the ground than Aguilar does by, I believe, 4 more. So he averages 26 yards per game. McLeod does on the ground. Aguilar averages 22 on the ground, and then McLeod has those rushing touchdowns he adds on as well.
McLeod's just been really impressive. He knows where to go with the ball. He's gotten a lot better from the start of the season until now. Throws an unreal deep ball. Completion percentage is really good. I think the App State game is the only game, and he was at like 58.7% that his completion percentage was sub 60. he was just super consistent in the early going and was like a solid player. Back half of the conference schedule, he looked like one of the like best 15 or 20 quarterbacks in the country.
And that was against bowl eligible teams. Every single one of those games was a bowl eligible team.
Yeah.
Which is just like insane.
Yeah, their end of no, I was just gonna say the end of the year conference play, and even the beginning, like their conference schedule, every conference team they played, right, was bowl eligible.
Yes. Did South Alabama reach 6 wins?
Yeah.
Then yeah, they were undefeated against bowl eligible. They lost one game against bowl eligible teams.
So they played they were 8-1 against bowl eligible teams. Their other wins: Bucknell, Virginia, and UConn.
Yeah, and if you look at UVA and UConn, they were 1 possession games away from being bowl eligible, so we can just count them in there.
Yeah, there you go. So in Bucknell, if they're at the FBS, who knows? You know what I mean?
Who knows what they do? But I'm going to throw some stats at you to try and really harden my case for why Jordan McCloud is the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. He's the only quarterback in the Sun Belt to rank in the top 2 in each one of these statistical categories. He's first in completion percentage. He's second in total pass yards, second in passing touchdowns, first in total touchdowns, second in passing touchdowns, first in QB efficiency, second in EPA per attempt, and second in QBR.
It sounds like he's the best player in the conference.
The only issue, and this is going to be I'm going to rebuttal myself and kind of argue with myself here. The only difference, though, is in all of those ones, he's second. So he's second in pass yards. He's behind Davis Brin. That doesn't count. Clay Helton throws it 50 times a game. Pass touchdowns, EPA per attempt, and QBR, which are kind of more advanced stats. And I don't know if the voters are necessarily taking into effect like these expected points added. But he's behind only Joey Aguilar, who is like second in a lot of other categories. But Aguilar is 8th in completion percentage and 4th in total yards. So I think that kind of outweighs the good that Aguilar has. He's kind of bad in these 2 other statistical categories, and McCloud is top 2 in literally every single one.
Man, I don't know when they vote. Is it pre or post conference title? Probably post, right?
Probably post. But I mean, Aguilar's probably gonna have a bad game against Troy.
That's true. If he goes out and they win it and he goes for something crazy, maybe. But I still think McCloud's got a great chance, a great case, as you just outlined. And as Kurt Signetti said post-game, they got him back next year.
They do. We knew coming into the year he had 2 years of eligibility, but I think there was a question mark of, is he going to come back? Is he going to test, the NFL market? Is he going to maybe transfer again? He's already transferred twice. But it sounds like the Dukes expect him. I think it was a 99% chance that he comes back and uses that 6th year of eligibility that he has, which is going to be awesome to see, because you said his improvement from beginning of the year to end of the year, his improvement just overall under this coaching staff is insane. If you take his stats from 2019, 2020, and 2021 and combine them all into one season, which the games played, it equals out roughly one season, a little bit more, and compared to now, he had 4.58% more passing yards. So those 3 years combined, he had 3,251 passing yards. He had 3,400 this season. He had a better completion percentage by 10%. He had 32 passing touchdowns compared to 23, a 39% increase. He increased his passing yards per game by 89%. The only part of his game that kind of regressed was throwing interceptions, but not really all that bad. He went from throwing 0.65 interception per game to 0.75 interceptions per game. Nothing really crazy. That's not really statistically significant growth, but he jumped in every single category, like by a wide margin.
Yeah, it would be fun to go back and listen to like our April podcast, like post spring game, talking about how Jordan McCloud was going to go crazy. And then Jordan McCloud went crazy despite being QB2 somehow coming out of fall camp. A very confusing offseason and summer. But this is like what we expected. We knew from like watching basic clips in like random games that was like, oh, he's super athletic and like makes good throws. If he's well coached, he's probably gonna be really good. And you can kind of just assume with this staff now that like if the guy has the traits, they'll coach him into playing really well, which is an incredible thing to have as a fan, to know like, hey, the coaches are going to put him in a good spot. And like the longer the year goes, the better they'll get. Because he played so well late in the year, sort of with the exception of the start against App State. And App's got one of the best secondaries in the entire Sun Belt.
He did still shred them when he needed to.
Big time.
Like on a 4th and 18, he decides to just throw a dot to Surratt. I mean, He is just very good at football. I think it's that simple. And I do want to get your take on this before we move off of Jordan McLeod being the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. Remember early in the season when Kurt Signetti said he has a lot of losing tendencies? He comes from programs that don't know how to win. How true do you think that actually was now looking back at how the rest of the season played out?
Arizona's pretty good, it turns out. So it makes me question it a little bit because aren't they they're like top 15 team right now? They're playing out of their mind with like the same staff. So I get what he was going for. I think it probably was some of it, right? Adjusting to like, hey, these are the habits I need to have to really excel in JMU's offense. Some of it too, though, I feel like is like just building up the chemistry with the receivers, right? If he's not getting quarterback one reps, getting there with Reggie Brown. And a lot of people probably forget Surratt started the year as a backup receiver to Taji Hudson.
Yeah.
And ended the year with more than 1,000 yards. Like once they realized like, oh, like he needs to be a starting receiver, the offense kind of picked up significantly. Like I think he had the touchdown catch against Troy, the one touchdown. And then he just sort of built and built and built. Once they had the right guys in there with the Sproles, Brown, Hudson, or not Hudson, Surratt, and then Horton, a lot of H's. Once they got that going, then it felt like everything sort of clicked into place and the passing game was elite and they figured out sort of what McLeod could do well and how to make in the right reads and everything click. And then also, as you mentioned, they stopped running it so much on first and second down so that the defenses weren't completely keyed in on the run. And then he started cooking too. So some of it might be like, hey, he had some losing tendencies. Some of it is like, I thought they just did a better job of like, we need to play these players and call these plays.
Yeah. I will say the one kind of flaw in Jordan McLeod's game, and I think this is a flaw in a lot of quarterbacks' game, is when it's on third and throw, he struggles in like passing situations.
Yeah.
Which he played well against App State late in that game. He is a baller. Like Jordan McLeod, we saw it against Bucknell, we saw it against UVA, we saw it against Marshall when he gets hurt, comes back in, has a good run. Like all this, he is a gamer. He is a baller. But there are times when it's like 3rd and 10 in the second quarter, and it's like, well, we can just punt now.
Right. And I don't know if he's like, I know we talked about like the NFL future. I don't know that he's going to be like an NFL starter.
But he's 6 foot, like 200. He's not.
That's what's so impressive though, is like they're putting him with receivers who like Surratt and Brown, maybe they have some pro potential. I don't know exactly like what level.
I think Brown will get a look, and I think Surratt after a few years will be an NFL caliber.
Surratt looks like an NFL guy, yes, for sure. But it's just super interesting where it's not like they have, I don't know, it's not Marvin Harrison Jr. Like it's one where they're just finding ways to scheme some stuff up, make it work with quarterbacks who are very good, but like Centeo, Cole Johnson, Jordan McLeod, none of those guys are like top 5 in the NFL draft. It's not like they have Drake May and they're making it work.
They're no Ben DiNucci.
Well, even getting that out of Ben, who looked like he like barely belonged on an FCS field.
Whoa. He looked fine his first year under Houston. Mike Houston did not put him in situations to succeed. Let's not destroy Ben DiNucci's name here on this podcast. This is a Ben DiNucci stan podcast, Bennett.
That he was okay. He looked like a very athletic.
One bad game where he throws 5 interceptions and everyone forgets what he did for the rest of the season.
He was super athletic and clearly was good enough to be an FCS player. That was hyperbole. But his decision making was suspect. Finger gun decision making. I feel like they just have a really good, impressive ability to have guys like know where to go to the right spot, and good enough receivers to make plays.
I agree. So this caps off an 11-1 season. It could potentially move to 12-1, but an 11-1 season in their second year in the FBS. What does this mean for the program moving forward?
Fell short of the standard, right? The goal is to go undefeated, go 1-0 every week, and one of the weeks they didn't do that.
All right, I'll be a little nicer. I think this drastically helps with recruiting. Kind of a selfish thing with it, though, is like it validates why we've been like doing a podcast and like being obsessed fans for so long. Like, did you ever get into arguments with friends of yours that went to a Power 5 school, specifically, I don't know, Tech or UVA, especially after we won the national championship? And they'd be like, well, that's a JV championship. That doesn't matter. And it was always like it was always funny when a Tech fan would say that, and then they didn't have a single national championship to point to in any sport. But like, it almost felt validating that they were this good last year. And then this year, it's like, yeah, I'm not crazy for thinking that this team was just better than everyone.
It's very cool, right? To go from winning all these FCS games and some like UVA or Virginia Tech fans like don't even pay attention or don't even care, to then having them be like, okay, like maybe you went 11-1, but
it was
like,
against the Sun Belt.
Yeah, your schedule wasn't good enough. Or like you only beat us by 1. Such a good, like that feels so good when UVA fans do that. Like, oh, you're so good, then why'd you only beat us by a little bit? Okay, like UNC didn't do that, right? And Louisville only beat you by a little bit. So it's really validating, I think, as fans, right? Who you're like, we could do it. Like if we moved up, we would be good. And everyone's like, oh, sure. To actually do it and then like exceed the expectations. I thought they'd be like winning record kind of good and then sort of growing into it. No, they're just like beating the living heck out of Coastal Carolina in consecutive years.
It's insane. I think we did a poll when this move was first announced, and it was, what do you expect? When do you expect JMU to be like competing for Sun Belt titles? And it was like 1 to 3 years, 4 to 7 years, one of those little polls. And I think a majority of the people didn't do 1 to 3. I know I didn't. I did the middle one where I was like 4 to 7, give them some time to bring in the recruits and build up that depth. Boy, I did not expect in year 1 for them to win the Sun Belt East. And in year 2, be, a fumble out of the end zone 6 inches away from being undefeated, potentially a lawsuit going through and playing in a New Year's 6.
And it's wild how it all happened so quickly, where it was like, oh yeah, they're just good in the trenches, like good enough to compete in the Sun Belt. And then depth, like last year, depth was a little bit of an issue. Both starting linebackers missed an important chunk of this season. They lost both starting offensive tackles. They ended up going off QB1 to QB2, so they clearly had better quarterback depth. Who else? Solomon Van Horst goes down.
Jalen Green?
Yes, Jalen Green.
Who is still leading the nation in sacks.
Yeah, and then what? Abby Nwabako-Akonji goes down early in the year. First game, right?
This was going to be his break. This was going to be his breakout year too.
Yeah, especially in a position where they decided they didn't want to go deep. So like it would have been cool to have like an extra body to rotate, and they just didn't have it.
Well, they ended up like bringing in like Tyreek Tucker and Amar Thomas, but that was just like out of pure necessity.
And like barely with some of the games, right, where they did Tucker a little more, but like Thomas kind of got in at the end.
And the secondary was kind of bad, like was a downright liability for the first 6-7 weeks of the season, and then they got really good.
And they're like, oh, what if we just throw D'Angelo Pons in there? And he's a stud, like it's a true freshman, where it's like the one
they've
position.
Done that in back-to-back years. Chauncey, they're like, let's just throw this random recruit in. And they're like, oh, he's our cornerback 1. And this year maybe wasn't like the Heisman campaign that Bennett had expected. It was a little bit of like a slower year, maybe a bit of a sophomore slump. That also could be because that he was guarding wide receiver 1s all season. But then you bring in Pons, and it's just like, oh, okay, we got 2 sophomore freshman dogs. And Brent Austin is behind him. Brent Austin didn't have a great year. He kind of got benched, kind of got pushed down the 2 deep. But he was coming off of a freshman campaign where he was getting rave reviews, got kind of banged up last year, had fall camp where he was dealing with a lot of like ligament injuries. And I think he just never really got fully healthy, could never really find the rhythm of the game this season. But you would expect maybe there's a jump back from him, maybe a regression to maybe somewhat in the middle, because I don't think he was necessarily as great as he was last year. I don't think he's as bad as he was this year. And you got a great slot corner because he's fast and shifty.
Had that pick 6 against UConn, right? That showed a little flash late in that game. So they're just loaded. And you mentioned the recruiting, and they've already kind of been killing the recruiting. Like high school stuff, they've got some guys you mentioned with Pons and Logan that have come in, and Aiden Fisher's really good, right? Tyreek Tucker. So they've done some great job in the high school ranks. They're just murdering the portal. Like they've been so good in the portal. Like Elijah Surratt played 1 year at an FCS school, comes to JMU, doesn't start for them to begin the year, and then ends the year with over 1,000 receiving yards in a 4-touchdown game against Coastal. Jordan McLeod. Tyson Lawton was probably the best running back this year. Like what they've done in the portal has been unbelievable with like smaller school guys, which is always funny too, right? Because now we're in the season where the portal's like opening up and people are going into it. And every time there's a Power 5 name, people are like, that's our next slot receiver. It's like our next slot receiver probably plays in the Patriot League, and he's going to go for like 1,000 yards in the Sun Belt. Like, we don't know.
Chris Thornton was a VMI transfer.
Yeah. We don't know the name of the new players that are going to come in, but they're going to be studs. Like, you've never heard of them, you've never watched them before, and they're going to go off because they're very good at evaluating talent.
It's insane. What does it mean that this game was a huge recruiting weekend for Coastal?
They already lost the one guy, and I know fans were all hyped he was going to go to JMU. He shot those rumors down pretty quick. He was like, "I'll see you guys."
They did flip that one West Virginia commit.
Yep, they flipped a West Virginia commit. I guess they all go to the same high school too, at least two of the.
Yeah, so I don't know how much of that, and I really don't. Ben is our recruiting guru. I don't know how much of that is JMU like flipping him or his best friend going like, "Hey, bro, you see what we just did to Coastal? You want to come with us and not play for Neil Brown?" And he was probably like, "Yeah, that sounds better."
They're doing some flipping. The game day helps, right? A lot of good things, but yeah, it's exciting stuff because they're kind of dominating some of these Sun Belt teams.
Yeah, honestly, just put us in the SEC.
They're ready for it. They're certainly ready for it.
I'm kidding. We'll stay in the SBC. Thank you so much. But Dukes are bowling. There's been a lot of questions, though, around bowling. So let's quickly go over what you have figured out. The research you've done, you've put your nose to the grindstone. You figured this out. You've called 15 different publications, 15 different entities, and you got a call back. You got an email back. So can you kind of go over what it means now that JMU is an alternate? Are they fully eligible? Can they make the college football playoff? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm really excited for next year when there's no tracking, because that was like a low-key annoying way to spend the rest of Saturday, like trying to figure out all the games. And then we finally got it figured out, but there was still mass confusion on the internet of who needed to win here. And then a bunch of teams started winning and it was over. But anyway, total nonsense there. A lot of nonsense about like what game they can play in. The NCAA bylaws around this are horribly written, like just so confusing.
They're wrong. Like they're wrong. Based off of what the NCAA told you, the bylaws are wrong.
The bylaw says, so it says, if an insufficient number of institutions meet the definition of a deserving team, which basically means you go 6-6. There are other caveats to that, but it becomes confusing. Then an institution that meets the condition, blah, 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 blah. You can get in as an alternate, right? If there aren't enough 6-6 teams, we've kind of gone over that. It then also says all deserving teams must be selected before an alternate may be selected. Why even include this line? It's the most confusing line.
And that's where all the confusion is happening. Apparently, once you get in, you've been selected and nothing else matters.
Super confusing. They make it seem sort of like you're just this leftover where there's 82 slots for teams for bowl games. They're going to fill 79 because there's 3 other teams that got in: Jacksonville State, JMU via the transition rule, and then Minnesota because there weren't enough 6-6. They're 5-7 and they have good grades. Shout out Minnesota.
Golden Gophers.
Watch them play against Wisconsin. Not sure that's a team that deserves to be in a bowl game, but shout out Minnesota. No, but anyway, so it makes it seem like they would get just like last pick of the bowls, reach out to an NCAA official being like, hey, there's some confusion here. Bylaws dumb. Didn't say that, but was curious. It turns out that this is only a lot of words here to say who the 82 teams are. So the NCAA plays a role in who the 82 bowl eligible teams are. And now that part is over. So then it comes down to conference like tie-ins. And then like ESPN and some TV partners get picks. But essentially it sort of boils down to JMU's not a complete leftover, and given their record, likely like fan interest in terms of attendance, but then also TV ratings, my guess is that they'll get a pretty good bowl game with a nice matchup.
Yeah, and so like there's tie-ins for all these bowl games. So like JMU can't get the bowl game that is slotted to get the Sun Belt champion. And there's probably another bowl game that's slotted to get the Sun Belt runner-up. Let's call that the Camellia Bowl and the Cure Bowl, just for easy sakes, because those are the tie-in ones. But then there's the Idaho Potato Bowl, the First Responders Bowl, the Frisco Bowl, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, and the New Mexico Bowl. All of those don't necessarily have like the champion must do it, that the third place West team must be it. Those are kind of more just up for grabs within the tie-ins. So JMU could go to, in theory, any of those bowls or any of the bowls that don't have any conference tie-in whatsoever, because ESPN owns what, like 17 bowls?
Yeah, they own a bunch of bowls, and it's unclear if the Sun Belt is asking the bowls to pick the fully eligible teams first for those other tie-ins. I don't know. I called to ask. I didn't hear back yet. I called like only a couple hours ago. I don't know if they even know. Like, who knows? But the gist of it is like there's a ton of open slots because the tie-ins don't match up perfectly correct, right? Because the Sun Belt has whatever they have 5 or 6 tie-ins. They have 12 teams that'll play in bowl games. So like there's a lot of Sun Belt teams that are gonna have to go to these other bowls. It gets confusing. And that was the point where I stopped. I was like, I don't want to count like all these tie-ins and try to guess because it's just a waste of time. And it would take me like until Sunday and nobody would care and I'd probably be wrong. But there's a lot of jockeying. The bowls sort of jockey and argue and try to get the best teams and the best matchup because they want to sell tickets. They want people to go. Given JMU's record, I think they'll be pretty high up the pecking order of like bowls wanting them.
Yeah.
So my guess is they're going to play a like exciting group of 5 team.
Which would be awesome. But like they're probably not going to get the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I know that's a bowl that's been floating around a lot. That has an ACC team that is in it every year, and then it rotates between a Big Ten and an SEC team every year. It was a Big Ten team last year at Maryland, so this year it's going to be an SEC school. But then you got like the Bahamas Bowl is also a hard tie-in with Conference USA and MAC, which is now the famous Toastery Bowl being held here in Charlotte, North Carolina. But then you got things like the Gasparilla Bowl. That has no conference tie-in whatsoever. So JMU, in theory, could go to the Gasparilla Bowl.
Seen a lot of projections for that. Also, I think it's fairly safe to say, like, I'd be shocked if the game is not based on the tie-ins, if the game is not for Christmas. I really think it'll be a pre-Christmas bowl game.
Yes, which I think will be great for me personally. I don't know so much about Bennett, but
I'm fine with that. Just get out of the way early in bowl season, play it, have fun, go kill the portal.
All right. Dukes are bowling, folks. We're bowling. We're having a good time. I was wrong with how I read the bylaws. It was confusing. That's on me. Egg on my face, but we'll continue rolling on. And as we get more information, keep it locked in on the JMU Sports News, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We'll have updates there as well once we get them. Now, as we sit here at the end of the regular season, a few weeks away from a potential bowl game, we wanted to take this time to rank the top 10 best regular season moments. You ready for okay, so let me break it down. Bennett sent me 5 of his favorite storylines from the season. I put down 5 of my favorite storylines of the season. I combined them to power rank them. I haven't done the Sunbelt power rankings for a few weeks, but I got my power ranking hat on, and I decided to power rank the top 10 storylines of the year. Me and him, we had a few similarities, so we only had 7 between us. So I threw in an extra 3 at the end so we could round out a top 10. Are you ready for number 1?
Oh, we're starting with number 1.
Oh, you're right. Let's start with number 10.
Oh, we're starting with number 10.
Good call. Good call. This is why we are podcasting duos for 5 years. Number 10 storyline of the JMU football season. JMU is going bowling.
Good one.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy? I want to ask you. Did you enjoy the tracking? Did
No.
you track?
No, it was stupid. I hated it. It's kind of like my take now, how I've done with the bowls now, where I'm trying to take a step back on Twitter and just let people argue about it to argue about it. That was kind of my thing with the tracking too. I just wanted to take a step when I knew I was going to know. And when we didn't get it, I knew I was going to be one of the first to know because I constantly live on Twitter. Same with this bowl stuff. When we know what bowl it's going to be, I'll know what bowl it's going to be. Mm-hmm. There's no point in trying to figure it out now because we're going to figure it out in a few days. So I didn't like the bowl tracking. Kind of annoyed my watching experience on Saturday too, with the group chat with you and Dom just consistently blowing up. I had like 3 or 4 other people also texting me about like, do we need this to happen? What's happening? How many more games? And I was just like, I really don't know. And I truly do not care.
I don't ever want it to happen again.
Yeah.
But the end of the 3:30 window, I enjoyed where it was Washington hit the game-winning field goal late. Oklahoma State survived in double overtime. They had some stuff sort of go their way late that started to be entertaining. And then when Florida State, I think Florida State clinched it, or at least that's what we were saying. And then Clemson won right after. So it was definitely good by then. And then Hawaii even won to really just lock it in for everybody. But based on that, our count was correct because JMU, Jacksonville State, Minnesota. So there were 3. So
Yeah.
it was Florida State that got it. I know there was some confusion. People were saying, "Oh, it's not official." And we were like, "Yes, it is."
And then Clemson ended, and we're like, "See, now it definitely is."
Yeah, it totally is. I also liked Florida State fans who found our tweet and were like doing like a handshake. They're like, "We love you guys and happy to help you out." And it's like, what do you? All right.
Did you see one guy? He responded. He goes, "For payment, we'll take your defensive end with all the sacks." And I wanted to respond and be like, "He's out of eligibility." Like, oh,
I forgot. Didn't Ben tell us that they were doing that rumor like early
yes,
season?
they've been doing it like all year. Yeah. So apparently Jalen
Lunatics.
Green has been on Florida State's radar since the jump. All right, number 10 storyline from this JMU football season.
Number 9.
D'Angelo Pons is a dog.
That's right. Deep end.
Well,
He
his
actually,
storyline, his emergence, and then having the overtime forcing interception and going from a backup, I don't even think he was on the first 2 deep, to
No.
being the number 1, number 2 cornerback. That just emergence, that growth throughout the year was an awesome storyline to follow.
Hopefully they don't lose too many guys. We'll see how the portal goes and the coaching staff goes. They have a lot of like, that guy should be on a Power 5 roster, guys.
Do you think now that they're able, like with the college football playoff expanding next year, do you think that will hold some JMU players? Granted, money's money and NIL checks. I'm not going to judge a student athlete for wanting to go get a milli, but like,
I think it will. I think it's definitely going to help. They might have some NIL opportunities on campus. Some of that's kind of unclear, but I think they'll keep some guys. I wonder if they get to a point where like people play there, ball out, and then like maybe late in their career, if they're not getting an NFL look, they take an NIL bag and then also go to a Power 5 to try to get an NIL look like some other guys have done. But who knows? It's a good spot to be, and they're going to get enough exposure here in the next few years probably that you could legitimately, if you play well, make an NFL roster and be drafted.
I think they have NFL guys on the roster now.
Yeah, me too.
I think in a few years they're going to be one of the most. This is a hot take. This might be purple lensed all the way. I think in a few years they're going to have the most draft picks of a group of 5 team.
Yo,
like consistently.
They keep Signetti for another 3 to 5 years. They're winning a playoff game.
Yeah.
Book it.
I don't think that's crazy. Number 8. There's 2 1,000-yard receivers this year.
That's crazy.
And one of them wasn't a starter week 1.
Surratt is so good. And also Reggie Brown, like really good. I know we expected him like, oh, he'll take a step forward. He was unreal as a deep threat. Did not expect him to be that great down the field.
His connection with McLeod was unreal.
He basically won him the Utah State game.
He kind of won him a few games this year.
Big time. He was great in the Marshall game, right, when they started to get the offense going.
Yeah, because the signals. They had Connor
Sign stealing,
Stallions
yeah.
on the sideline, yeah. Number 7, this is where it gets into not just the extra ones I threw in. Number 7, the number 7 storyline from JMU football this season, not tackling in fall camp.
This is just a Jack Fitzpatrick special. Why don't you explain how this still bothers you late November?
Look, the App State overtime, how many missed tackles were there? If they had tackled in fall camp, maybe one of those gets tackled, is all I'm saying.
They're going to tackle in fall camp next year and have like 4 preseason injuries, and you're going to be like, what are they doing?
Look, it was just so evident early on in the season, it felt like.
The Virginia tackling was horrendous.
Like, it's just,
That's
right.
an interesting one. I like that.
Number 6, the emergence of Aiden Fisher. There was 2 injuries this season to 2 potential Sun Belt caliber first-team linebackers in Torres Jones and Jalen Walker. They missed a lot of time after the UVA game. They never really saw a huge drop-off at the linebacker position, mainly because of the amazing play of Aiden Fisher. And then when they got healthy, the 2 injured linebackers, Walker and Jones, Aiden Fisher pushed Torres Jones off the field. Aiden Fisher went from a backup linebacker that got spot cleanup duty to being the Mike. Daniel Merriman shouted that out to us. He's the Mike.
Yeah.
He's the one controlling all the signals, the play calls. what is being told to him. That's fantastic.
His stats are so good. He's got 91 tackles. Nobody else on the roster has more than 55. He's second on the team to D'Angelo Pons in pass breakups with 7. He's third on the team with 5 quarterback hurries. He's the only non-defensive lineman to have at least 5 of those. He also blocked the punt, I believe, against UVA that was recovered by Pons for a touchdown. Just a stud. Like, we talk about like Power 5 guys on the roster. Yeah, he's one of them. Like, he's also bigger than the other, like Jones and Walker. Like, he is a Power 5 linebacker on JMU's roster.
Quarterback at Riverbend, linebacker at Riverbend in Fredericksburg, Virginia, has come on and has been just a monster linebacker. Excited for him next year with Jalen Walker if they both come back, because I believe Jalen Walker has another year of eligibility.
Yeah.
Number 5, the number 5 storyline from the JMU football season, the App State weekend.
Tough loss, but I thought it was a great weekend. Game day comes. The home crowd stays for all of overtime, right? Packed house, 26,000 or whatever it was. Certainly close to it. Great atmosphere, incredible rivalry. That's a weekend that I will never forget. I thought that was a ton of fun and great for the program. Even with the loss, I think it shined a nice light on the Sun Belt.
It was a fun one for sure. The loss kind of hurt me a little bit though.
Fair enough.
But that it was a great overall weekend, recruiting, everything like that. Number 4, we have a video to go along with number 4. Let's go!
Yeah.
The UVA win is number 4 in our favorite JMU storylines this season. I want you to take this away, the former UVA beat writer, what this meant for you as a JMU fan.
This was awesome, man. What a game. It's one that I'll remember forever. Just a great win, but also one that was an absolute roller coaster of emotion. And that's what stands out the most. The early 14-0 start where I was like, everyone's going to leave this stadium early. It's only going to be purple. That turned out to be true, but for a different reason. I thought everyone was going to leave early. I was like, wow, this is over. Like, are we going to drop 70 today? This is cool. Like, UVA stinks. And then it started to get a little iffy in there. And then there was a point where I thought JMU was going to get blown out, where they were very much struggling. Going into the rain delay, I still didn't have a lot of hope. Then they complete that incredible fourth quarter comeback. Memories of a lifetime. Anthony Calandria, 4th and 20, has his guy wide open and says, yeet, and threw it as far as he possibly could, which was only like 8 yards too far. And gosh, they won the game. What a win.
Also, just the weekend itself was a great time. We got great dinner at the local. We tried to go to 3 Notch, but it was like a 3-hour wait after the game. Apparently they don't, value our partnership or something like that. But no, it was a great time. Awesome Airbnb. Hung out with some fantastic people, drank some Bold Rock, drank some 3 Notch, and that was just a fantastic weekend. I think that was a better weekend than the App State weekend. But not saying the App State weekend wasn't fantastic, but like that was just so much fun. Can I run a hot take by you?
Yes.
I don't know if I've said this on the podcast. I think away games are better than home games.
Away games are super fun because it's like there's only a certain collection of JMU fans there. It's just a little like you got to kind of maybe a little more effort sometimes to go. I love away games. Away games are great.
They're fun. All right. Number 4. Got to find it here. Number 4. The heavyweight belt is just an epic moment. The Troy fans in attendance who got so hurt by it. Oh, man,
So good.
that's a good one.
So good. Yeah, if you're listening to the audio and you couldn't see, Pat Coons, heavyweight belt against Troy, defensive line coach. He did the sleeping, but he did the heavyweight belt so many times. And then it seems like he's done, and then he runs back, and you're like, oh, he's done, but he just wants his players to go, toward midfield, everyone else. And then he does like 3 more. He's like, boom, boom, boom. And Signetti, I think, made a comment after that was like, oh, we talked to him. We can't do it. Don't care. So good.
Epic.
One of the best moments of the year.
Epic. The number 2 moment from this JMU football regular season, the quarterback one battle, quote unquote battle, because apparently after the first day of fall camp, it was Alonzo Barnett taking all QB1 snaps. Then, according to Kurt Signetti in that Bucknell game, he got the yips. And so Jordan McLeod stepped in the second half, and he put together maybe a Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year resume. Just an otherworldly kind of roller coaster of emotion for us JMU fans, where, especially for us, when that transfer was announced, we were like, he's going to win the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. There's no way he doesn't win this competition, this, that, and the other. People didn't agree with us. People kind of were saying some things, and then there was some things that were said at the start of the season. Bennett was photoshopped onto a clown because he was mad that the coverage wasn't what he wanted it to be. We all were a little upset, and then it ended up being that we were right.
It ended up being that we were right, and thankfully all those feuds have completely ended.
Do you have that shirt?
Yeah, I've got that shirt. I should have worn it.
Can you grab it?
I think it's in my car, so it's not within grabbing distance. I got to figure out exactly where I put it with all my travels.
Okay.
I'll bring it out for the next one, or at least a full season podcast.
Thank you.
But what a crazy storyline. What a ridiculous offseason. If you had told me at halftime of Bucknell that JMU would go 11-1, I'd be like, no, that's not right. Like maybe 1-11. Like they were giving up some like chunk plays in the passing game that was weird. And then they couldn't complete a pass. And now they've got one of the most efficient passing offenses in the Sun Belt.
Yeah. If you're listening, watching on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it may be, drop in the comment section what your favorite moment from the regular season was. We want to know what you guys thought your top moments from this JMU football regular season was. So drop it in the comments if you're on YouTube or Facebook. Reply to this tweet if you're on Twitter. And before we go into if anyone drops those into the comments, can we get a drum roll, Bennett? The number 1 moment from the JMU football season was.
Here we go. They're just showing. Oh, Signetti. You can't use that. Oh, he's got his phone out. You can't use that. That is illegal from the minute the replay has started. Wow. You can't do that. I've never seen that.
That is illegal.
That is illegal.
Phone moment has to be hands down the best moment of the entire season. In that moment, I don't think we knew they were going to piss away a 35-point lead or whatever it was and nearly choke that game away. But I mean, it just makes that game so much better.
What a hilarious game. Mountain West Network, which was just awful. I mean, just horrible broadcast with big homer announcers. Kurt Signetti takes a phone out, it's someone else's phone. He's showing a replay that they messed up on a ridiculous fake field goal touchdown. There was actually a nice little play. They got a fast kicker there at Utah State. Nimrod can run.
Nimrod.
What a hilarious game. That's the one game, maybe more than any of the others that I'll remember really well, just because it was so ridiculous. The broadcast was hilarious. The phone was hilarious. The actual game itself was absurd.
What a game.
What a game.
I mean, just look at this. Just one more time. Just one more time for the number 1 moment of the JMU football season.
Here we go. They're just showing. Oh, Signetti. You can't use that. Oh, he's got his phone out. You can't use that. That is illegal from the minute the replay has started. Wow. You can't do that. I've never seen that.
I love the whole sequence where every coach and assistant on the sideline is giving them the phone. They're like, "Look at the phone," and then they're like, "You can't do that," and they all just sort of like slink away, and they're like, "Right, we didn't, yeah, we didn't do that."
It's also, then if you listen to the commentary, the play-by-play guy clearly is like, "This is funny, isn't it?" And then the color guy's like, "This is illegal. What? No, you can't do this. Someone arrest this man." And meanwhile, the play-by-play guy's, "This is funny."
It was so funny, and yeah, they wanted him like jailed for that. It was quite the reaction. They were announcers.
All right, so that's the top 10 moments from the JMU football regular season. All right, it's time for News or Snooze, presented by Christopher William Jewelers. Bennett, he'll give me 3 questions. He'll give me 3 quotes. I'll say if they're newsworthy or snooze-worthy. Let's go.
All right, this is Jalen Green on some interview with Dave Rigger. He said, he was asked about like his long-term plans post-football. He said, "What's ideal for me is a more front office type of role. Long-term, ideal-wise, I could see myself wanting to be a general manager of a franchise." And he continued to say, "But I'm not sure about coaching. They've got a lot of hours." Loved that quote.
That's a great quote. I'll say it's newsworthy just because that's a great quote. He's not wrong too, especially if you're a college football coach. The season's never over.
Would also be cool. We'll see what his pro career looks like after the rehab and everything, but it would be pretty interesting to see if he followed that path and tried to get into like a front office role. It'd be super cool.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2, not a quote, but this is just a fact, a statement of fact. Heaven Bristow, supposed star player for the women's basketball team, Ohio State transfer. Her waiver was denied. She will not play this year, but she's eligible to play next season for the Dukes.
Newsworthy for a few reasons. Weird thing that the NCAA has against JMU and these waivers, I guess. I don't think actually that I think they're very mutually exclusive and they don't play into each other whatsoever. It's just kind of funny that these waivers continue being denied for JMU. With that being said, very interesting approach from women's basketball, from Coach O, from that program, like how they went about with the waiver. They applied for it like very close to the start of the season because they thought like that would help them. Clearly it didn't. She was expected to be like a star guard, getting heavy rotational minutes. So it's a pretty big blow in terms of what this women's basketball team is expected this year. But next year, it could be huge because Peyton McDaniel, listed as a redshirt sophomore, the only senior on this team is the UVA transfer. There's a chance this team can run it back and just like get even better.
Yeah, depending on what exactly happens with the roster, who they keep, things like that, kind of sets them up like to have all their like young, talented players or like mid-level players, just more experience with Bristow next year, who I'm assuming can still practice with them. Kind of sets them up for like an NCAA tournament win kind of outlook next year. So
it's like, remember, was it 2 years ago now when JMU women's basketball was like turning the ball over at like an exceptionally high clip, but like they clearly had the talent. And we kept saying next year is going to be so much fun. And then the next year they went to an NCAA tournament game, nearly upset Ohio State. This kind of feels like the same thing.
Yeah, it gives me like a tiny bit of softball vibes where COVID actually came at a really good time. They all got an extra year. So they played a few games that 2020 season, all just like practiced together more, got more experience, and then ran it back and made the Women's College World Series. Would not expect like a Final Four run or anything, but it could end up being sort of a blessing in disguise in some ways, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. This is from The Athletic's Bruce Feldman in an article. One sitting head coach we think will get some consideration is James Madison's Curt Cignetti, who might be open to jumping from the Dukes to Duke. He has built JMU into a legit FBS program, blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Talks about the record, blah, blah. He's also familiar with North Carolina, having spent 2 seasons in the state while he was the head man at FCS program Elon. Word is that Cignetti is also in the mix for the Indiana coaching vacancy.
That all sounds great. I highly expect Cignetti to be involved in a lot of these vacancies. I'm putting it at a 50-50 shot he leaves this offseason.
Wow.
I think there's a good chance it happens, but I also think that like he won't just leave. I think it has to be like a good opportunity. He was really calculated in leaving Alabama to go to a Division II program. He was really calculated in choosing to go to Elon. Then he was even calculated to leave Elon, which is what he built into JMU. And plus, his dad told him that he needed to keep an eye on JMU. So I don't think he just throws that to the wayside per se. If West Virginia or Pitt come available, maybe not Pitt because they just fired his brother. So I think Pat Narduzzi still has a few years left up there. But like West Virginia is probably the one job that I would give it a 95% chance he leaves for. Indiana, not so sure. You got a short leash. They weren't happy with what the coach was doing there, and he was doing all right. And Duke, I could see making the jump to, but I would put that as like a 50-50.
I feel like the point you made is he's going to have to leave for like the right fit for him, right?
Too old.
He's got some time left. He says he wants to coach till he's 75.
Sure, but you got to. Would you rather have a coach at 62 with only 13 years left, or a coach at 37 with a lot of years left?
But that's like if you're Duke, you're not getting a guy for 30 years. You know what I mean? So that's where it becomes interesting, depending on the job. Like Mike Elko was there for 2 seasons and said bye. But like you gotta know what situation you're going to. It's hard to win at like Syracuse already hired a Georgia assistant, but people are floating him for Syracuse, Indiana, Duke. 3 basketball schools. Kind of hard to win at basketball schools.
He's also coaching at a basketball school now.
Well, they're not a basketball school anymore. Football boys. Well, maybe they're in everything school, right? So you'd rather be in everything school. I just think it's hard to go like it's easier to win at JMU than it is at Indiana. So I like, would you leave for Indiana knowing that like you're probably never going to beat Ohio State or Michigan consistently?
I would be very interested to see what incentives, what raises, everything like that he gets, because Daniel wrote an awesome article over on jmusportsnews.com breaking down his contract, what his base pay is, what all of his incentives are. He is a woefully underpaid group of 5 coach, FBS in general coach. Indiana will probably offer him what, $5 million a year?
That's true. That's true.
Going from $750,000 to $5 million or more. It's a Big Ten school. They have the budget.
I think with him, I want to say that he would consider and be like, what if I waited it out for one where I think I can win and get that, even if it takes 2 more years? Like if the JMU goes to the playoff next year, adds a little more credibility to him. Well, kind of a lot more credibility in terms
if
of
they go to the playoffs, he could go to he'd be like a big fish to fry. Like he would probably have been in the been a serious contender for Texas A&M if he went to the college football playoff and won a game or even just won it.
So then you're looking at like a big time job, probably at a place you can win more consistently, end your career there, still have some legacy. I've seen some people talk and say like he wants to stay at JMU to build a legacy. You can build a coaching legacy somewhere else also. Like it's not the only place
he's also
can, like, be remembered.
He's also built one at JMU. Like he will be forever enshrined in JMU lore. He will be if they ever bring like a statue area on campus, like he'll be one of the first statues put up probably with like McMillan and
I like this, a statue area. They need to get that. Don't expand. They should just take out Godwin and add like a section of statues.
You know what I mean, though?
No,
like,
I know what you mean. Well, like you could do them like outside the stadium in a certain spot or something and have like multiple. Yeah, he's a great coach. So I don't know. Some JMU fans are like super confident that he's here for the rest of his career. I'd be kind of surprised because he's such a good coach. If he has a decade left, I don't know. It seems pretty easy to go to a Power 5.
Yeah, especially
I hope he stays.
The thing is like legacy, all of that. You can't you can't get inside someone's head when it comes to money. That is so much money. That's $3 million more, $3.25 million more than what he's making now.
And like, there is something to be said for like, I think Bridgeport's atmosphere is improving dramatically and is a really fun place to watch a game. And the fan base is passionate as heck. If you go to like a Power 5 game with 100,000 people in the stands, it's different. Like it's just a little bit different. It's very cool. It's one that you can't completely replicate. Like you can't blame somebody if they want to coach in that kind of environment, in those kind of games, or have a realistic chance at making the playoff. And it's going to be a lot easier in a Power 5 conference because they're going to get multiple bids. I know some people are like, JMU's got a path. The path is being the best out of 5 conferences, right? You have to be the best out of the American, the Sun Belt, the MAC, Conference USA, and the Mountain West. And that's not the easiest thing in the world.
Let's be honest. 3 of those don't count. Yeah.
You can take
and
them.
Conference USA.
There are going to be teams, though, like Liberty, if they go undefeated and get a good enough non-conference schedule, could run the table in CUSA, have enough reputation, and still maybe be the team. So it gets a little harder, but anyway, yeah.
Well, that was it for News or Snooze, presented by Christopher William Jewelers. That was a good one. That leads us to the Sun Belt Weekly Pick'em. Bennett's dancing because he won the regular season. He won the regular season by 3 games. Whatever. It's fine. I have time to catch up and win the overall crown. Who you got, App State or Troy?
This is a great question. Troy's the more complete football team.
I'm picking
There's no
Troy.
doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But App State's kind of got that dog in them.
Okay.
So I'm going to take App. I think
Really?
I think Sean Clark understands if he gets this one, that seat is very cool. And that's something that I was 1 week off of when he understood that, like, okay, let's kick it into gear. This is my job. This is my livelihood. And I think he totally gets it now. I think John, speaking of coaches going to Power 5 schools, John Summerall for Troy, that boy's leaving soon. He's leaving. Isn't the Kentucky job open? That's his if he wants it. Oh, no, because Stoops stayed. So, darn, I'm really getting ahead of myself here. Well, I tell you what, he just says, you know what, Stoops, go to A&M anyway. You can co-head coach with Elko. There you
Also,
go.
Elko and Elliott were hired at the same time, right?
Oh, yeah, they whiffed on that pretty hard at UVA.
Wow. Yikes.
Yeah, pretty tough. But I don't know. I could see Summerall's name getting floated here and there, depending on some openings. Sean Clark's name's not getting floated anyway.
Look, have you seen App State fans kind of say that?
That he's going to get his name floated?
No, it's a good thing that he's not getting his name floated. And
They've actually said that seriously?
It's like a very funny take. They're just kind of like, yeah, well, you got to have a coach that sometimes he's got to build the program. And like, this is what you got to have. And sometimes, and it's just like, it was a very convoluted take. I think Troy wins it. As the Troy boys said, Troy, Alabama is a hard place to get to even when you wake up in Troy, Alabama. And all of that being considered, Troy, they have a rabid fan base. They have a fantastic team. And I think they win by like a 21-10 type of game.
I'm sticking with the App State boys, man. I love them.
I hope so. Gives me a chance to get a game back on you. So that's the Sunbelt Weekly Pick'em. And that brings us to trying to find the right lower third. Men's basketball ranked number 22 in the nation. They continue rolling. They have Buffalo and Keystone at home this upcoming weekend.
Keystone might be the harder of the 2 games.
Damn, that is just rude. But no, they won the Cancun Challenge. They're looking really good. They demolished Fresno State. I'm pumped for them. Excited for them to play again. Feels like they haven't played in quite some time.
Are you on the schedule?
No.
Good. Can you I want you to guess the game sponsor for the Buffalo game.
University Outpost.
Copper Beach.
Well, that's a new one.
Yeah, and then the Keystone one is presented by the Harrison Altitude.
What's that?
I'm assuming it was like the Harrison apartment complex that added the altitude, but if there's a current student listening that can confirm or deny, that would be helpful.
All right. Love those two. Women's basketball, they went 1-1 in Cancun, had some visa issues.
Yeah, so I guess they played without Susha Kozlova because the reports are that her visa had a travel visa issue where she couldn't go to Mexico, which is probably questionable scheduling if one of your 3 best players can't make the trip to some tournament. But okay, whatever. They go 1-1. Michigan State spanked them. They gutted one out against Montana State. I still think they're pretty solid, and they've got Liberty on Friday, which will be interesting.
Excited for those teams to get back into it. And volleyball, they receive an at-large bid, a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. They hit the road today. I believe they played Baylor first up. You think that's a winnable game, Bennett?
Yeah, Baylor's record's terrible. Do you know how any of the RPI works?
Like, do I know how RPI works?
Well, like they kind of got. Did they ever beat Coastal this year? No, they went 0-3 against Coastal. Doesn't Coastal have like a way harder opening draw? Like, I think whoever.
But JMU had a top 25 ranked win at the beginning of the season. Like JMU's early season RPI, early season
it was
wins,
enough to carry it through, even though like in conference play at the end.
Yeah, because they're 6-8 against RPI 1 through 50. What's Coastal? Coastal might be worse.
I don't know. I thought Coastal had a darn good. Maybe
Coastal's RPI was a little lower than ours.
Okay,
I think Coastal's RPI was in the 40s or 50s.
Yeah, that's why I was just confused of because I saw some.
Yeah, so Coastal must not have scheduled as hard earlier in the season.
Okay. Yeah, they took a lot of early season L's. Okay, like a lot of early season L's. That explains it a little more. They got UVA win, which is not bad. Yeah, I guess a lot of their quality wins are in conference, so that'll get you. Interesting, because I saw some Coastal fans upset, and I was like, that is interesting to me as well, considering you went 3-0 against JMU and are probably going to get smoked in the first round. But that makes a little more sense. JMU receiving some early season benefit. But I think Baylor is not that good, if I'm not mistaken. Their record was like woeful. Let me pull it up to make sure I have it correct here. 16-12 overall.
Yikes. So a potential winnable game.
I think it's
that's what happens when you're a seed, though. You're playing a worse team.
Yeah. So it's winnable, and that'd be really cool.
Thursday game. The match is Thursday, volleyball at large. So that makes it now men's soccer, women's soccer, and volleyball all at larges, all fantastic.
I don't think they've ever won.
They've never won. No, they have not.
Well, that'd be pretty cool then.
It would be. Big stuff coming. Lauren Steinbrecher has built volleyball into arguably the most consistent and most dominant fall sport.
Speaking of people in need of a raise.
You're not wrong. Speaking of people who are in need of a raise as well, the men's soccer head coach, Paul Zazinski. What he's done, he's built, I know this is talking about the loss, but he's really built JMU men's soccer into just a complete power. He's been coaching at JMU for 6 seasons. They've made the NCAA tournament 4 times. He's turned them into like one of the strongest mid-major programs in the nation. And it's like really cool to watch. So they're really good. Unfortunately, their season came to an end in LA against Loyola Marymount, LMU. It was a 1-0 defeat. It was a 67th minute goal that proved to be the game winner for LMU. JMU had a ton of chances, especially early on. They just could not capitalize. Their keeper for LMU was absolutely fantastic. But there was a few that you just they had a few sitters right in front of the net where it was just open and they just skied it right over it. And it was really painful to watch. Kind of hurt that I stayed up till like midnight watching this game, 1 a.m. But a 1-0 loss ends their season, but the future also very, very bright for men's soccer.
They've been killing it across sports, everything school, people are saying.
Some people are saying. And that takes us to listener questions.
Listener questions. I hope you're ready for some listener questions.
Are you stalling to pull up listener questions?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, here we go. This is from Don Alexander, JMU JUCO 1. I believe this is a complete hypothetical from reading it earlier, but let's confirm. Do you think JMU ends up the highest ranked group of 5 team in the bowl committee rankings, college football playoff rankings, had they been made eligible and won the SBC championship game, particularly if SMU beats Tulane in the AAC championship? Or would a 2-loss SMU bump ahead of the Dukes?
It's a good question. That's a lot of ifs. So if JMU won the Sun Belt Championship, so essentially take this JMU team, put them into next year, they beat Troy, and that's how I think an SMU team jumps over them.
I think SMU's wins kind of suck. I feel like JMU would.
But if they had beaten Tulane,
their wins still suck.
Okay. All right. You know better.
But no, I hear that take. I also think I would wonder undefeated Liberty against 1-loss JMU. How would that go?
I think JMU beats that.
I think so too, but probably a conversation, right? So that'd be interesting. Be undefeated Liberty, 2-loss SMU, 1-loss JMU would be an interesting combo.
JMU undefeated this year. Are they one of the final 4 teams?
Should have been.
That's what I'm saying. Kyle Helmick at KW Helmick What will it take for JMU to continually out-recruit App, Coastal, Marshall? Even after being the best football team in the Sun Belt over the last 2 years, their current recruiting class is still ranked behind the mentioned schools for 2024 on 247. I understand recruiting websites are trivial, but will JMU ever get to a place where they're recruiting at a level above everyone else in the Sun Belt? I think they're getting there right now.
Yeah, also worth noting, because recruiting websites are dog water, mostly for like group of 5, right? The Power 5 stuff is fine. One of them, and I'll confirm it here once I block my ad blocker on 24/7 Sports. The Sunbelt class for JMU, they do it weird where it like values like the more recruits you have, the better your ranking is. So they don't do it based off of like their initial ranking is not off of the average of what your recruits are. It's of like your total points, which means like if you had 25 3-star kids and JMU had 15, the 25 3-star class would be ranked ahead of JMU. So like App State, for example, their average recruit in this 2024 class is given a grade of an 82.9. JMU's average is an 83. So their average is above, but they have fewer quote unquote 3 stars. So you could argue right now that their class is already better if you go on like the quality of each individual.
So it all depends.
Yeah.
Follow along with Ben Hoffer.
Yes.
He's covering all of that recruiting stuff, and maybe potentially one day we'll start to hand out kind of grades and kind of do it that way as well. But for now, he's covering it all in depth. There's some exciting recruits coming. I think JMU will not take a step back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. James Mountain had 2 questions. First one, will any of our injured players be back for the bowl game?
No.
Most of them are like season ending, right?
Kidwell, Wyatt, and Green all are season ending. Kalon Black has been battling injuries. He'll play, but I don't know if he'll get his regular workload. And Kai Wright left Coastal injured on like the first play of the game, came back, played. I think he had a touchdown later in the game. He'll be playing.
Yeah. There you go.
And the defense is fully healthy outside of Jalen Green.
Second
and Nwaba Kuokonji.
Yeah, a lot of season ending, not a lot of like week-to-week stuff right now.
Yeah.
The second question from James Mountain, what are the differences between the 3 organizations collecting for JMU athletes? What % of funds goes to athletes versus management expenses for each?
We're going to try and get on Cliff Wood of the Montpelier Collective during the offseason, JMU offseason, to talk about the Montpelier Collective, because we're not entirely sure. If you go to their frequently asked questions, I believe it says no more than 10% of all the funds that they bring in will go to like administrative fees, meaning that 90% of what is donated to the Montpelier Collective goes to the student athletes. The way the Montpelier Collective is set up is that you donate to them. I think they then decide which players it goes to, and they don't just kind of pay it. They make them do community service work around Harrisonburg, and then that is how they then end up getting their NIL money. The Duke Club is all 100% with James Madison. It is their fundraising arm, and I don't know what the third organization is.
I wasn't sure what the 3 were, so I think you answered it pretty well. From Andy Lohman, are the Dukes the greatest collection of athletes in the history of the world? I'll hang up and listen. Great question.
Yes.
Well said. Well said.
I don't think there's much debate.
It seems pretty obvious at this point, right?
Yeah. Especially if they win like the Camellia Bowl.
Puts it over the top. All right. From Joe McCoy. I love Joe's interactions on Twitter, Mondo Life. Shout out, Joe. He asked us, how does JMU's giving campaign compare to other schools in the Sun Belt? They're doing, what is it? Dig in Dukes or Diggin' Dukes?
Diggin' Dukes? I think they've raised $400,000 today about.
It says, it seems like we're doing better than most schools.
Joe, I don't know how plugged in you are to like the Arkansas State fundraising. It may seem that we're doing better than most schools because we're following it a lot more closely. I really don't know. According to the USA Today reports, we still have a large portion of our budget come from student fees, which is kind of a reason why our waiver got denied. So I think we're still lacking in terms of overall fundraising behind other Sunbelt schools.
How much did you say it was today?
It was last podcast or 2 podcasts. I think it was last podcast. It needs to be under 55% of your total overall budget comes from student fees. USA Today said, 1 second. 1 second. This is really great podcasting.
I was asking, this is good information. I was asking about the digging Dukes thing.
Oh,
but if you want to find the student fees, you can.
$400,000.
Really?
Last I saw it was $350,000.
What do you think that would have been if the donors weren't so mad?
What do you think that was if the department wasn't in peril?
Okay. But that's a pretty good little campaign, right? That seems good.
For having I didn't know this was happening until like a week ago.
I also had not heard a lot about this, but yeah, it seems like they've done a decent job.
Bill Papp, bottom_9. Explain bowl selection process from JMU. We did earlier in the podcast.
Yep. Don't want to rehash that.
Sir John, what school do you prefer to bowl? Do you prefer to play?
Oh,
I don't care. And I don't mean that in like a condescending, rude way. I know I've been called condescending and arrogant before on Twitter. I'm not trying to be that. I really don't care. I'm just really excited to be in a bowl game. So whoever.
That's fair. My priorities: Liberty, Memphis, Toledo, UCF, USF.
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Bithpo, yeah, just have them like bowl eligible, even though they didn't hold up their end of the bargain for JMU.
Charlotte just hired Tim Brewster, the Colorado guy that got fired, the tight
end. Dang, they fired Biff already.
No, like as a recruiting coordinator.
That's pretty solid. Do you think he'll wear like actual shirts next year? That might be a good step in the right direction.
Biff or Tim?
Oh, that's good. That'd be fun.
I think Tim will come down to Biff's level and wear cutoffs.
So Biff will go to like a suit and he'll have his assistants wear the cutoff or something.
Yep.
I would like that. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Tortilla Jacks at Eric_Fleming6. Who's more valuable to their respective team? Byington or Signetti? Can I offer a hot take?
Go.
I think it's Byington.
I was going to say, like, a lot of football coaches in recent memory have won some games. Signetti's really good, so he's valuable. Basketball program was a dumpster fire, and Byington's got him cooking.
For years.
Yeah.
For years. Like, Signetti has said this. He said this in his post-game interview. He said this multiple times, where the culture was here. The foundation was laid. The leadership has led the football program to where it needs to go. From Mickey Matthews to Everett Withers to Mike Houston, it was all handed off very well, and it let Signetti just take it and run with it and has taken it to new heights. Fantastic. Absolutely amazing. Basketball hadn't won diddly squat in 30 years. Byington took over a team that was one of the worst in all of Division I and has turned them into a ranked team for the first time in program history. He's had to do all of that. He's had to deal with the portal more. So Byington's hiring of coaches, recruiting in the portal, recruiting high school players, and just coaching has been more, and culture building has been more magnificent, I think, in my opinion, than what Signetti has done. Both of them have been phenomenal, but I think Byington is more important to men's basketball.
Is Byington the coach of JMU next year?
Yes.
Really?
I think so.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I think he has one more year. Unless they win an NCAA tournament game, then I have a feeling it's going to be like the Fairleigh Dickinson coach who just like leaves.
Yeah, that'd be something. Okay, last one from Mangy Dog.
Love Mangy Dog.
Some Sunbelt fan bases have branded us as whiny for all eternity. How will we ever regain their love and respect? Alternatively, how long will it take them to understand we don't really give a rat's patootie?
And then Martin responded with, or Martine, there's really no way to win that argument. With continued success, we'll go from whiny to arrogant. JMU fans, there's some that are whiny.
Some of it's warranted.
Like some of it, I've probably been a whiny JMU fan before.
Oh, yeah.
Bennett has. Oh, you probably have. You listener, you've probably either have done it outwardly on Twitter or has sent a message to a friend or in a group chat being a whiny JMU fan. Mainly probably when the waiver was happening. And we didn't get the waiver. We were probably like, what the F is this? We are whiny. We're a whiny group. I don't think it's unwarranted. But again, like you
No.
said, Mangy Dog, we really don't give a rat's patootie.
And the arrogant point is so true. Like if JMU makes the playoff and or wins a playoff game, the fan base will be hilariously insufferable. Where it's like, this is what we do, right? That's where Signetti's always like, we play for championships, even though they haven't like been eligible one for the last couple of years. It's like, yeah, we do. We're champions. That's it. Like coming into the transition, we're like, yeah, if we go 6-6, that'd be cool. And now we're like, we just win all our games.
We just go 1-0 every week.
Yeah, we just go 1-0 every week for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Did you? I think it was Josh Walters quoted a JMU football tweet where they were like hyping up the win or something like that. It's either Walters or Neil Harrow or Lauren Steinbrecher. One of them quoted it and said, what Signetti has done is really masterful because he got this team who wasn't really playing for any postseason success and got them all bought into the culture, and they won 11 games. And they've been this dominant over a 2-year period where it would have been really easy for a lot of players just to throw in the towel and not care.
Yeah. Super. Imagine next year with stakes on the line. I mean, it'd be crazy to think if anyone stays within a possession of the Dukes.
I mean, look, maybe I'm overreacting. Next year, I don't think a 14-0 season, maybe even a 15-0 season is off the table when they only play like 12 games.
Well, once they're in the playoff.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. That's
and
true.
the Sun Belt Championship. You might be underselling. It might be more of like a 16-0.
You know, I was trying to say a number more than the season. And I undersold it.
Yeah, they'll be in the playoff next year. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, anything else you got to add?
No.
All right. For Bennett Conlin, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the JMU Sports News Podcast. Wherever you listen, wherever you watch, be sure to like, rate, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you guys. Give us a follow on JMU Sports News on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and check us out with our home on the web, www.jmusportsnews.com. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. See ya.